Northumberland coast at a place called Alnmouth. It was here in 1978 that John and I actually had the call to community. We'd just got married, but we decided we'd come for a few days here to just try and seek God and find out what He wanted us to do with our lives. And the word that we both got independently was community.
Now what we didn't know at the time was, in the monastic tradition, it's quite common for people to go and seek out a spiritual guide, and with them to pray and to seek God, how do you want us to live our lives?
It was going to be about a year later that that word actually found some reality in our lives. We'd acquired a big house in Berwick-upon-Tweed, and we had a letter from a guy that we just got to know called Andy Rain. And he asked in his letter if he could just stay for a few days. So I was heavily pregnant with Jane, my daughter, and I naturally said, okay, just a few days would be okay. But little did we know that this was actually the foundation stones of what was later to become the community, the Northumberland community. Those seeds were sown.
It was an apprenticeship we started then.
Yeah.
And what most people don't know is that apprenticeship lasted 14 years, because it was 14 years later that the Northumbria community was born. And Andy lived with us on and off at different points, and over that time we were joined with lots and lots of different people from Northumbria, from Berwick, from Edinburgh, from Newton Aycliffe, and eventually from all over the country, who came and met with us at what we call the Easter Workshop. And that's happened every year at Holy Island, just near Alnmouth, where we would meet and celebrate together and learn more and more about community. But we have to leave Alnmouth soon, and before we go, we want to say thank you to the brothers, the community here, the Society of St. Francis. In the early days, they were a great help and support to us. I want to thank in particular Brother Jonathan, who was my spiritual director for some time, but also we want to thank Brother Colin Wilfred and the community that were with him here at the time, probably around 1985 when we first came back up to Northumberland, because they supported us when the church pushed us out for a little while, and they put their arms around us really, and through them we learnt many lessons about what it means to be part of a monastic community. It's another very wet and windy day in Northumbria. This is our first visit back to Hetton Hall after 9 years. And I think both of us are going through all kinds of feelings.
Lots of different emotions.
Lots of different feelings. This is where we used to live, and it used to be the stable. When we first got here, it was full of chicken coop. Chris Haggerson, bless him, had the job of digging them out. And Chris got bit by something. And first he ended up paralysed in an intensive care. And I rang Sid, one of the local ministers, and we went down, and we had to say to Chris, look, we need you. We need to pray for you. You'll have to get out of bed and you'll have to come back to work.
No time to be sick.
We laid hands on Chris, prayed for him and said, right up home. And bless him, he jumped out of that hospital bed and he came back and he got started here. And we first started off in the main house with our 4 kids.
Yep, with loads of other people, community living to the roots.
It was. I mean, the kids used to get up in the morning and they couldn't get in the loo for people. I remember my daughter Jane screaming, I don't care who
Hammering
you are,
on the door,
but get out now. But we were desperate to get in here, but we didn't have any cash. Well, we never had any cash in the early days. And I remember walking around the block praying and saying to the Lord, Lord, you'll have to do something, because we need the money to get this done. And I remember the Lord saying to us, I can't do anything because I'm poor. And it really stuck in my mind that, but he said, I'm poor, but I'll go to the Father for you. And he did go to the Father, and a few days later one of our community, Moira, handed us a cheque for £10,000, and she says, I hope that gets your house finished. And it did. Yeah. And Jesus went many times to the Father because we were utterly and totally dependent on him. When we left Northumbria, not only were we penniless, but we were also homeless. And Kevin Ellen, our friends from Leicester, took us in. And together, Linda, I, Kevin Ellen, Aunt Claire and the kids, the dogs, we all were living in a 3-bedroom house. And one day I went to sleep by the fire and I had a dream. And in the dream I came back to Hetton and I came through this gate and I started to walk down the drive here towards the chapel. when I got here to the chapel, there was a crowd of people standing here, and in front of them I could see somebody was speaking, but I couldn't hear what they were speaking about. So I tried to get a little bit closer, and I went and I stood behind the crowd. And then I realised they were speaking about how to drive a Morris Minor, which seemed a bit strange. And what was happening was the leaders of each of the groups that were here were being allowed to go and sit in this Morris Minor, and they were pressing the buttons and the pedals and putting the lights and everything on. And then when they got out the Morris Minor, they were given a certificate. And on the certificate it said, "You're now qualified to drive a Morris Minor." So I thought, oh, that's a little bit strange. I wonder what that means. And then I noticed one of the people recognised me, and they called everybody into the house. So I was just left standing in the garden by myself with the Morris Minor. And then I looked at the Morris Minor, I thought, my goodness, that's my car. That's the car Linda and I came and drove all the way through so many different places to get here. So I thought, I'm going to take my Morris Minor home. And then somebody come running out the house, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, actually I've come from a Morris Minor." And they said, "You can't have the Morris Minor. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people here, the community here." And I said, "Well, I'm very sorry, but that's the Morris Minor that I drove here, and I'm going to drive it back now." And then a whole crowd of people came out, faces I recognised as faces I didn't know. And the tone changed a little bit, and it was, "Well, I'm sorry, but you can't have the Morris Minor." And I said, "I'm sorry, but I'm going to take it." And it was actually in a glass case. And the case had been locked when everybody went in. So I went over where Harry Robb used to live, because I knew there was an axe there, and I broke the lock off the thing. And again, I was told I couldn't have it. So I said, "Has anybody got the key?" And everybody looked around at each other, and they were looking. And I said, "Actually, I've got it here." And I said, "That's my car, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to take it." So I wasn't feeling bit, I just wanted my car back. So I got the Morris Minor, and as soon as it's put the key in, it started up. And it hadn't been started for a long time. I remember coming driving out of here and away down the road. And I went back to where I was staying in Leicester. In the dream, I had it, and I felt so thrilled that I had my Morris Minor back. It felt so good. And I thought, that's great, I've got it. And then the Lord said to us, "But it's not yours."